Thanks for coming back and welcome new friends to the In-Between. This is a podcast where we share and talk about third culture and cross-cultural experiences.
Today, we're going to talk about cross-cultural education, communication, and its evolution. We are so happy to have our first guest, Miss June Naughton, to share her story and cross-cultural education experiences with us. So relax, grab your drink, get comfortable, and surf the wave with us. All right, today's episode is a special one for us. Today, we have the former Director of International Student Services at Manoa, Miss June Naughton. And for us, a very special person because she's also the founder of what is now the International Student Association at the university. For a lot of people listening, maybe especially those who are part of ISA, this isn't just a guest. This is someone who adds so much value and who made our college life experiences feel so much more connected and special. And even if you weren't part of ISA, this conversation is really about something bigger. It's about how people from different cultures find connection, belonging, and understanding. So June, it's really an honor to have you with us today. Thank you for coming.
Welcome, June.
Thank you very much for having me. It's delighted to be with you and to share some of the experiences that I've had because ISA has been very special to me and I think to a lot of other people too.
I can still remember the first time I joined ISA, and I can never imagine how ISA can change my life and change my experience in college. So it is actually very important not only to me, but I'm sure to a lot of ISA members and international students too.
Yeah. Before we maybe talk a little bit more about ISA, June, would you mind sharing us a little bit about your background and what shaped your path?
I grew up in Honolulu. I went to school here, went to Marino School, stayed in one school, went to the University of Hawaii for my first 2 years, and then I went to California to go to school in San Jose, got my bachelor's there, and then I went on to New York City, went to Teachers College at Columbia University, and experienced very similar things to many of the international students. When you transition from one culture to another, even though it was America, United States, the West Coast is very different from Hawaii, and I certainly experienced a little bit of culture shock, homesickness, and of course, I didn't know what that was all about. Then when I went to New York, there was a whole different experience. And I think you had talked about this in an earlier podcast. Yes, it is very different. And I met a lot of international students, both in Hawaii and in New York, to help me feel more appreciative of different cultures. Then I came back to work at East West Center for a couple of years, or actually a summer before I went back to New York.
It's quite a big transition to have gone from Hawaii and all the way from basically the West Coast and East Coast of the United States. Was there something that maybe sparked a fire in you that you wanted to travel and go so far from home?
I think in Hawaii, many of us, when we graduate from high school, we want to go somewhere else to go to college. It's just like you, all of you. I want to see something else. But I don't want to go too far. For me, California was pretty far. I had to get on a plane and go away. But it was something that I really wanted. I wanted to go away from home and see something else and experience and have different experiences.
That makes perfect sense.
Were you expecting to have an impact or culture shock? Because certainly the culture in mainland and Hawaii are so different.
Nobody ever talked about that. We talked about going away to college, but we didn't. Most of my friends were just says, "Oh, we're just going to go." We had no clue.
Kind of thinking back now, did you have any culture shock experiences when being in New York or California?
Without knowing that was a culture shock.
Yeah.
As they say, all those Hollies look alike. All those white people look alike. Well, that happened to me is I could not distinguish one student from another when I would go to school, and it was really difficult for me to make friends. It was hard for me to make friends, so I would always escape to my comfortable Hawaii friends. And so I think although I didn't realize that I could not integrate myself into the California culture. My roommate was a sorority girl, and there was this level of sophistication of most people who joined sororities and had dates and stuff like that. I wasn't that familiar with that kind of thing, and the idea of even dating somebody from a different culture was not in my head.
That actually happened to, I would say, a lot of international students. Maybe, yeah, I would say a lot of international students, because when they first moved to United States for studying, and they're a little bit hesitating of going out and meet new people or knowing the local culture. So I think in a way it is actually considered normal. Yeah. But
yeah, it is a culture shock. It's an encounter with a different group of people and different way of dating is something that is a shock.
Yeah, it's already, I can always remember when I first moved to Hawaii from Taiwan. The first day of class, I was sitting in the corner of the classroom and not knowing what to say to my classmates and how to talk to my classmates. Not only the language barrier, but that's another thing. But in terms of not knowing what kind of a culture they have and not willing to find the common side or what I can connect with them, is actually making me hesitated at the beginning. Yeah. But of course, like later on, knowing the culture of Hawaii and knowing some of the local culture in Hilo, that really helped to try to interact with my classmates. Yeah.
I can relate as well. When I first got to UH Hilo, my housemate was someone from the mainland, and I wasn't really sure how to interact with mainland white guys since I had been living in Japan most of my life.
Yeah, I did too. I couldn't relate to my roommate because she was always going on these dates and always going on these sorority, activities. And of course, I was always home alone or, going out to San Francisco. And so finally, I hooked up with these other Japanese roommates, and we got an apartment because I'm much more comfortable with just being with other Asian people.
Understandable.
They were mainland Japanese. They were different, but they were more my kin ones then.
You could relate to their values a little bit more easier than, I see.
It's probably the same as you, Casey, because you're more familiar with hanging out with Asian people.
I would say so, most likely. Yeah. I do, whenever I visit my family, or let's say my father, who's over in Virginia, he personifies those Western values more clearly. And it definitely feels like I'm in a much more foreign place when I'm with him. It's not a bad thing, but it just feels very different. Yeah.
So, June, I actually have a question for you. Was there a moment or experience that made you realize cross-cultural work was so important to you?
Actually, my intention, my career goal was to be an elementary school teacher. And I taught for 2.5 years. I taught fourth grade for 2.5 years. And I realized I did not like teaching, especially younger children like that. And but I had accidentally sat next to this woman who was working with international students. I was on a train going up to Boston, and she carried on a conversation with me. Usually I don't carry on conversations with my seatmate on a train, but she told me she worked at the airport. No, she was a volunteer at the airport, making sure that the international students that came into the United States knew what to do, and she was helping them to making sure that they would have a place to stay, a way to get into New York City. So she was helping them. I was introduced to a job opportunity in New York City when I was working in New York City, and thinking that I really didn't want to teach fourth grade, which was my career path. And someone told me that there was a job opening at New York University in the American Language Institute, working with international students, and I was delighted to interview for them, and they offered me the job.
Oh.
And so I took the job, and at that time, the job description was help these international students that are coming in and help them adjust. And so we had activities and programs. I took 3 busloads of international students to Washington, D.C., arranged for different activities in Washington. I'd only been to Washington, D.C. once. So this was like, oh, okay.
That's a lot of responsibility.
Wow.
These were all college students who were very professional. They were older students and more mature. And because they were international students, I knew they would follow the rules because, right, if you come from a foreign country and you don't know the language, you don't know anything, you keep time. They're not like American students where they go wander off and get lost. When you say the buses, please get back to the bus at 3:00, they get back to the bus at 3:00. So with that, I did different activities. I worked for about 4 years with international students in different capacities in New York City, and I just loved it. But I knew I needed to come back to Honolulu to take care of my parents. And so I was looking for an opportunity to work in Honolulu. And I was offered a job at the International Student Services. At that time, my job description was to take care of orientation and activities and host family programs for about 800 to 1,000 students at that time.
That's a sizable amount of students, for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm actually surprised back then, in that period of time, there were that many international students already.
There were quite a lot of students, yes. It was expanding.
Wow.
When you retired from the International Student Services Office, how many students was there at that time coming in?
We averaged between 800 to about 1,300 international students. That was because our tuition at that time was resident tuition, which was one of the lowest in the nation. And of course, Hawaii being more Asian, a lot of the students felt more comfortable. The tuition was acceptable, and it was closer to home, closer for the international students to come from Asia. Most of them were Asian students. A lot of Canadians, and so they were paying resident tuition. I think one semester was $85.
Really?
Yeah. Once upon a time in the 1960s. And when I went to school at Columbia, the tuition there was $32 a credit.
Wow.
I see.
Well, times have changed.
Big time.
One question I want to ask you is, since you had so many opportunities to work with international students once you took up that role in New York, and then, of course, when you came back to Hawaii, looking back now, what drew you to this specialty of working with international students, and what has been the most rewarding experience that you've gotten out of it?
What led me to seek out a career in international students, it was by happenstance. I wanted to quit teaching, 4th grade. I wanted to find another career. I had no idea what I would be doing. But when I met this lady on this train that worked with international students and suggested that I could work with international students, I jumped at it. I had some international friends at the University and Teachers College in New York. I had worked with Micronesian students earlier at the University of Hawaii, and I had done one of the very early international nights at the University of Hawaii.
Really? So you kind of had an inkling that you were interested in this area.
No inkling at all. Don't forget, in the 1960s, there were very limited opportunities for women. You were teacher, you were either teacher or a secretary or nurse. Any of these other opportunities is usually, this is completely out. It's not something you would work at. And I had no idea of ever working at a university. That was not in my head at all. But because of this just mentioned, and it was a matter of time, place, and opportunity that just came together. It was made in heaven, really.
That's actually really different from what Casey and I was thinking before we prepared for this episode, because we always thought that we did not know about this. And we always thought that you working as an international student advisor or a supervisor or something from before has always been something that you wanted to do. Because you've been doing that for so long time. We thought that this is actually something that you wanted to do. But yeah, that's just really surprising.
I would have taken any job that was offered me at that time because when I was teaching fourth grade, I knew I had to get out and find another job, and I would have taken anything. But I couldn't be a lawyer. I couldn't be a doctor. I would have been satisfied just being a secretary, but I couldn't type and I couldn't take shorthand.
So was there a moment or was there a click that you felt you were meant for this job in your life? Like taking care of international students or giving them advice, helping them to involve the local community a little bit more and knowing the local culture a lot more, in order to have a smoother university life? Was there a moment that you felt like, this is something that I actually want to do?
No. It was the demand of the job. It was the job description that said, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And I said, oh, okay. Now, how do you do this? And okay, now I got to put this together. What do you want me to? So, no.
I see. Wow.
I had no idea.
But I'm sure maybe at the first you felt that way, but as you made a career out of it and grew into the position, do you feel like you started to develop a passion for it?
When I was in high school, I volunteered for the American Red Cross. There was a program called Junior Red Cross, and there was my boss, I guess, because she had several camps. She had camps, and I joined her, and the camps were to build junior leaders to become club organizers in their high schools. And that was where I learned some ideas about leadership. Right? And I also learned how to, from that I absorbed about organization, learning to organize things and bring people together and to help people. That was basically this, help people. And it would, but help international students, no, a lot of that was just the job situation.
I see.
It's a little bit different from what we thought, but
no, there was no such a thing as working with international students or international student advisors was just beginning. I don't think there was that kind of a job when I was in college at all. I think in the 60s, when international students were becoming more prevalent in colleges, those jobs were just beginning to be created. It was very early in the university system to have somebody that would be dedicated to work with international students.
I see.
So it was a new career at that time.
It's a new career design, yes.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sounds like any international students before that time was pretty much just on their own.
That's right. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they were on their own. And then finally, when they realized that all these international students were just wandering, they didn't know what to do and they were getting isolated. And Yeah, becoming almost a group in themselves that were not succeeding in the culture, and because we had also more immigration issues, we needed somebody to take care of these people. And I remember a comment from one of my colleagues that says, "We can't take care of them." And of course, I should have said, if they came to the International Students Office, we will take care of them. But this was somebody else from another department, and it was a new thing. But even now, the International Student Services has now become more administrative rather than to help students. And that's because a lot of the international students that are coming now are much, much more sophisticated, much more accustomed to being traveling and being in a foreign country and surviving. The services that we used to offer, we used to help them find housing. We used to help make sure that they had an orientation, how to bank and we didn't have credit cards at that time. So how to write a check, how to manage your money, how to find what a lease was at an apartment, all those little things that we grow up in your culture knowing how to do. They were not offered to international students. And we don't offer them now, I don't think. Offices now, very administrative rather than, I always had the attitude that international student advisors were really teachers. And that's part of my background, is my teaching background. We were teachers and helping people to readjust to this society and taking care of whatever needs to be taken care of that is not academic.
Yeah.
That was my attitude, and that was how I ran the office. And that's how I wanted the office to be.
I see. I think it makes sense at the time, right? Especially because information wasn't so readily available. So students who did travel abroad, they did need help. But these days, with the internet, even with AI now, information is so accessible that I suppose it does make sense that the international student services turn more administrative. But I do like the idea of how community-driven it was when you were there.
And we're lucky to be a part of it. Yeah, we're so lucky to be a part of it
too. Yes.
Yeah. Because I feel like that's what the core message is, right? You want to make those students feel like they can connect and integrate with their new environment. And it feels like that doesn't really exist too much anymore, and that they're on their own to find that sense of belonging.
Yes. Yes. And that sense of belonging, I think, was really important for me to pull together those students and whoever wanted it.
All right. Well, I think it's a good time to shift gears. And now we'd like to talk a little bit about the origins of ISA. Could you talk a little bit about how you came to found this association?
I'd like to go back to the time when I was a freshman at the University of Hawaii, because at my freshman and sophomore year, I started a club called Kahui Kukua. Was part of my Red Cross background in high school. And that Kahui Kukua is the helping club. And of course, I didn't know who I was helping. It was anybody needing help, Red Cross is there, right? That's their motto. And so I had friends and we found this, and there were Micronesian students who were wandering around. And so we said, "Oh, why don't you join our club?" It's just, they were kind of lost. And so they said, sure. And so that club that I had started actually eventually developed into an international student association. And that was in 1955, 56, 57, okay? And then I left to go to college, and the development of the International Student Association went on beyond that time at the University of Hawaii. I had no idea that was happening. When I came back to the University of Hawaii, there was already another iteration of the International Student Association. They were hanging around in the office that I now joined, 1966. So this is 10 years later?
Yeah.
And so there was another group of students that I hung around with because they were already in the office, and I was the newcomer coming into the office as a new hire. And that group I'm still familiar with because we were about the same age, maybe 5 years difference. And they became my social group. They're the International Student Association, and I'm the student advisor, but we're equals. But through the times working in the office, we've had different groups of students who formed a core group. We call themselves the Peer Advocates. We call themselves the Peer Advocate Leadership Society. We call them the International Student Association. We had different iterations of groups of students who came together and said, let's get together and form a social group. The current International Student Association, of which you two belong to, came about after I retired from the International Student Services, ISS. When I retired, a group of students, they had a party for me, a retirement party for me. And so they asked me what I was planning to do after I retired. And I said, what would you like me to do? Because I didn't have any plans at that time. And they asked me to please organize them, to get them together, and so that they could form a way meeting together. And I did. But taking together all my experiences working in leadership experiences with international students, with my own background in Red Cross, and through the years of helping these groups of people come together, we sat together and wrote a set of bylaws or guidelines and a structure that I felt would work with international students based on more leadership and international communications. And what was the other one? TLC.
Teamwork, leadership, communication.
Yeah. So that was all my 44 years of experiences together and saying, okay, I finally figured it out how an ISA can work. And I got this group of students to put it together and work on it. And that's how this International Student Association that you have been in is a accumulation of all my experiences through the years.
I see.
Now we have an answer to our question. I mean, we always remember, me and Casey, we always remember there was a group called PALS before ISA, but we did not know the evolution of it.
And it was actually Linda, who was the director of International Student Services, that coined the TLC. I mean, I knew about teamwork, I knew about leadership, and I knew about international, but I didn't put TLC together as tender loving care. I mean, so we can credit Linda for that.
Yeah, I remember her talking about it at some of our beach powwows and advocating for the TLC.
Yeah. We also have to give her credit for the word Ohana, bringing Ohana. This is what we're about, is bringing Ohana and community to one another.
Exactly. And
yes.
Yeah. And for our listeners, Ohana means family in Hawaiian. So that's an amazing story, an amazing journey to what ISA is today. What do you think is the secret sauce that you were able to add into helping to contribute to the evolution of PALS and then into ISA in order for them to work with one another to make their lives, their university lives, that much more valuable?
I don't know if you remember the requirement that all students, all ISA members had to join a committee and work together to plan an activity. That was intentional because I think that's the secret ingredient, to involve people with one another in a smaller group, because you remember ISA actually had grown pretty large, but it was working together so that you'd have a small team of people that you would get to know instead of trying to get to know everybody, and planning and working together to plan something that you could say, I did it for the other people. I did a service that other people enjoyed, and I feel good about making this a success. That was, I think, very important. And that's why we also had the structural president, vice president, the officers. That was also another team that was intentionally set to have a small group of people working intimately to be together so that they would have something to do that they could accomplish. And in accomplishing that, you grow, you learn experiences, you grow in confidence, and you learn to respect one another and to hear one another. I think those are really important. That's how you build your teamwork, your leadership, and your GL.
So it sounds like you intentionally put international students into a situation or like a frame in order to have them to successfully cooperate with other people from different countries or from different culture in order to help them to adopt this.
Yes, absolutely. That was necessary. I learned that if you just bring people together, like we have at the welcome party, you just bring people together, but and they don't, when they leave and they don't have any kind of responsibility, they just leave. They may have saved somebody, but there's no meaningful interaction. And you need that meaningful interaction to feel that you've been included, you've been seen, you've been heard, you're doing something that was worthwhile. Whether it was worthwhile or not really didn't matter. You were doing something.
Yeah, the most thing I can remember the most was the international night. That was something that is a bigger scale of activity that all of the international students have to involve in it. And then not only that, but also we were pretty much making our own decisions in order to form such huge event instead of having the supervisors or of course the supervisors and advisors are doing this along with us, but there was an opportunity for us to actually do it ourselves. And then we knew that we can actually achieve it. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I feel is my personality. It's your decision. And whatever, if you make a mess of it, it's okay. It'll turn out whatever it doesn't matter. We'll just bring it together. So not to control anybody, not to say this is the way it has to be, but to allow them to make the decision so that the decision is theirs. So whatever you pull together is yours. This is your program. It's not my program that I want you to do, but it's your program that you want to do.
Yeah, that was really important to have a platform for international students to communicate with others. And I remember there was another thing that I remember the most, that one of the team has to get sponsors and they have to go to the local community to get sponsors. That was pretty much a big challenge for them because if I were I wasn't in that team, but I was thinking about if I were in that team, I have to be so encouraged to talk to local businesses or local groups to tell them what we are doing and what we're trying to offer them to be exposed. We have a platform for them to show themselves to the students. And that was something that I think that will be pretty challenging for international students. But ISS offered this platform for not only the local groups, but the international students to work as whole. Yeah, I think that was pretty impressive. But yeah, that was the thing that we have to thank ISS for those. And thank you for forming this. I think those experiences are it's unforgettable. And some of the things that we learned from not only ISS, but ISA, actually, we were still applying in our daily lives or even with this podcast.
I hope so.
Yeah, because the way Casey and I discuss about different topics and how we can do each episode is still applying those experiences that we learned from ISA to do something that we want to do right now. Yeah.
Yeah, agree with you. Maybe it would be okay to ask you if some of the challenges you faced with working with students who had difficulty integrating, who you had trouble advising, someone who came from their original culture to this new foreign place, but just has trouble integrating with the new culture. Maybe they're experiencing culture shock, but they don't understand that it's a thing called culture shock.
Yeah, I don't think those students came to us at that time. Because unless they came to us and said, I'm having trouble, as all of us know, we don't really know we're having that trouble because it's just bothering us so much that you don't think anybody else can help you because you just think you're crazy.
That's actually pretty good advice right there. Maybe we should talk about that. Okay.
Yeah. The reason we did PALs is because I noticed that some people were not integrating. And by creating these little pockets of students that get together because they weren't integrating and bringing them together so that they had a small support group, help them with their cultural integration. But those groups were short-lived because once these groups kind of felt more comfortable, and they just went off and did their own thing.
Casey, like I think as what we remember or what we think about having ISA helping any students to overcome any hardship is a little bit different from what ISS actually doing back then, because we were hanging out so much. We thought that is the ISA helping us, but it's actually just some of the individual groups. I'm not too sure if that's the case, but
before your time, though, before I retired, there were all these national groups. The Chinese got together; they had their own Chinese group, Hong Kong group, the Malaysian group, the Japanese group. They all had their own little groups. If somebody was having trouble cross-culturally, we would just put them in touch with their fellow countrymen. We didn't integrate them with. We didn't do cross-cultural stuff at that time.
I see.
just because in our time when we were in ISA, the group was so big. Oh, the Hong Kong people, the Japanese people, they were all hanging out together. That's why we thought it's
very international.
It's very international.
But your time, your group, was actually much more sophisticated in one sense, much more. You had already have done cross-cultural stuff because you traveled. This group of international students traveled more. They were a little bit more affluent. The groups in the 60s and the 70s were very poor, and they needed one another to tell each other how to survive. It was a different group of people because they were the first out of their country as a foreign student. The groups that your generation was more the sons and the daughters of already educated people, and we had a little bit more money, a little bit more sophistication, a little bit more ability to meet other people. The group between 60s and mid 70s were unsophisticated. They were a little bit on the survival method, much more so even than the late 70s. They came literally almost with nothing. So the host family program was very essential for them to introduce them even to the American culture. And of course, at that time, there was no internet, there was no phones, there was nothing. When you left home at that time, you left home and you did not communicate back with your family except a time of death. Yeah. If your mother or father died, then you would get a telegram.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Everything is going through telegram. No car. People have to write down the notes, what the message was.
Everything was by mail, right? But there were smaller numbers of people at that time.
Stronger sense of isolation.
But also a need and a connection to family. So the host family program was very important. And I started the host family program at the International Student Office.
Oh, okay.
Because I knew how essential it is. So we'd call the host family and say, excuse me, so-and-so is arriving. Would you please meet them at the airport, take them home, and help them find a place to live? It was at that level at that time in the 60s.
I can add a little based on this homestay family thing, because I lived with my homestay family when I first moved to Hawaii, when I was in Hilo. Yeah. And I can say host family is actually, if not first, but second most important factor when an international student first moves to any country, any foreign country, because they are actually the more direct and first impact for international students, whether not only for cross-cultural communication, adopting the local culture, and also with, it's basically just pretty much everything at the beginning of studying abroad phase.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is really important. But knowing that you started this homestay family for UH Manoa, this is amazing. This is actually...
That was why I was hired, actually, is because I had some experience in New York, with the
Mhm.
host family program.
Okay.
And I was asked to start that to find families and to arrange a way in which the international student coming in would meet with their host family. Actually, tell the host family to meet them at the airport, take them home, and help them find a place to stay, help them shop, help them open a bank account, introduce them to their friends, introduce them to life in America.
Yes.
That was, yeah, you're right. Just,
Yeah, I can always remember the first time I
yeah.
touched down in Hilo, and then they were just right over there at the gate meeting me, and then took me to school to register, took me to banks to open an account, and even took me to physical before the school starts, everything. And not to mention, I was lucky. I joined the basketball team right before the school starts because it was a Christmas break. And then they took me everywhere. They even took me to try it out. They even took me to my first game, even though I couldn't play because the physical examination didn't happen yet. But yeah, everywhere. I think, yeah, I totally agree with you that this program is helping a lot of international students so much to adopt the local culture. And I'm not too sure how the international students right now is still living with their homestay family, because right now like you said, it's so sophisticated. So a lot of international students might get their own dorm or their own apartments right now with all kinds of technology. They don't need to adopt the local culture in order to survive in the foreign country. But one of the thing that can help the international students to get more comfortable in the foreign country. Yeah.
Yes, that relationship between host family and the students was very strong. And we have people who are still connected at that time, but we don't have the host family program anymore. Students no longer are interested in that kind of experience.
Like, I guess I'm lucky. I'm actually still in contact with my homestay family. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about then and now. How has cross-cultural interactions changed over time?
From the 70s to the 80s, they were more sophisticated. They had more idea of what they were getting to. Then they relied very much on their fellow countrymen. The Chinese were supported with Chinese. So when an international student came in, instead of trying to introduce them to other international students, we really introduced them to their support group, which is their home country people. So that if a Japanese student came in, we'd ask another Japanese student to kind of help them integrate them across into the American culture. In the mid 80s, students came, they had more money, they had more sophistication, and they had more contacts of their own in the community that they could rely on. So they no longer relied on the International Student Office to help them with the integration. And that was why we started PALS. Mm-hmm. The early name of the International Student Office was PALS, Peer Advocate Leadership Society, because we no longer needed all of that basic survival. We could now work with international students who wanted to know more intercultural interactions and experiences rather than just survival and experiences.
Makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense.
Gotcha. So it really shifted quite a bit over the years.
And now, because technology has evolved to such a degree, the ISA is now mostly on social media. I think they do meet, but only the officers meet. And then the rest of the students, the rest of the members are really on social media. They don't meet. You remember how we used to meet once a week?
Yeah, every Thursday. Yeah.
They don't do that anymore. They have activities, but it's planned by the officers, and it just goes out by social media.
Well, sounds like they're missing that secret sauce. Working with those small committees to plan it themselves. Yeah, I see. So it's a very top-down approach now.
Yeah, that actually leads to, since you mentioned about social media, that leads to something that I also wanted to ask you next, has social media made the connection easier or more shallow? because it's always pros and cons. I'm not asking whether good or bad. I'm asking, is social media helping the international students for easier cross-cultural communication, or in what way that the communication has been evolutionized?
See, when I left, social media was not an issue. That whole technology hadn't quite developed when I left. I left in, 1999?
Yeah. There was no Facebook.
No.
So I guess social media is influenced in a way, but I guess it's just how people look at it. Because sometimes some people think it might be good, like us. We might think it's bad because it's not as what we were, how we interact with other international students back then. But right now it is their style of communicating with other people.
We didn't really use it too much back in the early 2000s, right? It was there, but it was just simply, I saw some pictures you posted, but let's meet up this Thursday and plan the rest of this activity that we're going to do. It was more personal. Remember emails? We used email quite a bit, I think.
And Facebook was just established back then at the time, so sometimes we used the messenger when there was like a really rough messenger. I remember. Yeah.
In your opinion, at least these days, what can foreign students or just students in general do better to connect across cultures? What kind of mindset do you think they need to have to be more open to this?
I don't know. I don't know the international students at this moment. Just realizing things have changed so much. The reliance on one another, of people. You go to the internet to find information because you don't trust people. I think the whole trust has changed. And so I think there's a whole different way of interacting with the bureaucracy, or I think the university itself has changed so much that has influenced the students in the way they interact with one another and with the faculty and anybody else who might know something or have more experiences. I think that's changed. Yeah. Just think about that.
Wow. Yeah, it reminds me of something again, that within the people speak Chinese back on campus at the time, I still remember whether the people that joined the ISA or didn't join the ISA, we often discuss what we can do to solve our visa problem or something. Not all of the people know that we have to go to ISS. But there was something that people going around is, you just go to this office that's to see Yubin. It's like, just go to this office to see Yubin. He can answer you that question. Yeah. But I guess now, just like you said, people go on Google, type in research and get a solution out of it.
Mm-hmm.
People tend to trust their own research than someone who's an expert.
Yeah.
People seem to think that what they look up themselves is more trustworthy than asking someone who's been doing this for years. Your 5-minute Google search does not equal my years of working in this field.
And nowadays, maybe even students, when they go up to someone to ask question, and then they will share what they got on the internet and discuss with the person instead of getting the suggestion from that expert.
You mistrust experts now, because experts are only human beings, and human beings are limited. Google and AI gives you all kinds of answers.
But I still think it's worth talking it out with someone who has been dealing with it for a while. And having an open mind, I think, is good. And I think that connects back to the whole notion of trying to connect with other cultures. Yeah, you can look online and learn about some culture from Brazil, for example, but I think you're still missing some of the essence by just speaking to someone who is from Brazil and who has lived through and experienced those cultural moments. And you just can't get that from an AI or Google search.
Now I think about this is this podcast is what we're trying to do is to encourage people to know what the other cultures really is instead of just Google it or asking ChatGPT about other culture. because pretty much do this podcast based on our experiences. And that is something that maybe people can get it from Google, people can get it from GPT, but it is actually our own experience. And then we encourage people to share their experience with us, and we can talk about it, or we can share their experience with other people as well. Yeah.
There's that difference between what's in the head and what's in the heart. And what you're talking about is what's in your heart. And sharing that is very important because it comes from a place of love and a place of caring and respecting. And that's basically what I think we should all be as human beings, how we promote peace.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I really congratulate you on what you're doing, and I hope you keep doing it.
Yeah, thanks, June. It's a really good takeaway for our listeners, is to keep that to heart.
I'd like to say that my motto has always been that we are all international students exploring the world, because there was a distinction once upon a time between foreign students and foreign student advisors and international students and international student advisors. There's a transition from there because we finally recognize that we're all international students. American students always thought, oh, it's them guys. But now, the Americans actually are international students also. They should be. The whole world is up for us to explore, isn't it?
Yeah, I totally agree.
I think one of the most important things that people don't look into it is local doesn't mean that you are more superior than the outsider or the foreigner. There's no majority group of a certain place or a certain nationality. So, like you said, everybody is international students. It's not like we are going to somewhere and we learn from different cultures, but but we hope that the local culture and the local people can learn it from us too.
Absolutely.
Learn it from the foreign students as well. It should be a two ways. It shouldn't be just one way.
It's called reciprocity. Our experiences should be reciprocal.
I like this idea where when you've lived in one culture all your life, that feels normal. That's what you identify, right? But the more time you have interacting with other cultures and being in a different environment, that normal that you identify with starts to get diluted. Somehow you start mixing your normal with their normal, and you start to open up. And that's where I think that cross-cultural awareness really starts to kind of manifest and bloom. It's difficult to describe with words, but that feeling and that notion of starting to understand one another at that level, I think is extremely valuable.
Sometimes hard to describe, but when you have that feeling and you really get it, it really begins to enrich you and makes you feel good.
Yeah.
And we need to pay attention to that good feeling within, because it's really important. And expand it. Yeah.
Yes.
And become aware of it and seek it. Actually, we should look for those good feelings because it's there.
For sure. We should always be chasing that feeling, right?
Yeah. That's what growth is, actually, isn't it? Growth is actually expanding ourselves, not only physically, mentally, emotionally, cross-culturally.
I remember many of the conversations I had with other ISA members while I was a student there, and just learning about so many different customs and aspects of their culture, and eventually taking the time to actually travel to new countries that I'd never been before and to experience it with them.
Yeah. Actually, I have a couple more questions for you now. I want to ask you, June, is what advice would you give us as we continue for this podcast? Now you know what our purpose or our intention is for this show. As an advisor for us back then, as of right now, what kind of advice you give us for a better inspiration for others?
Why don't you interview the president of the new ISA? Whoever's willing to be interviewed. That's the thought.
But from your perspective, is there anything that, as we're doing this podcast, that you think that we can do better in further down the road.
I think you guys are doing terrific. I was very interested in what you've been doing, and the podcasts are pretty interesting, kind of fun. If I have any other bright ideas, I'll let you know. And I'm sure, and I trust that it's fun for you folks too, and that you're getting a lot of reciprocity from doing this.
Oh yes, I think there was something that we did not mention throughout all these years after we graduated. Casey and I, we have been, keep in touch with each other, and this kind of conversations has been going pretty much 70% of the time. Do you think there is something that you hope the listeners or the audiences can take away from this conversation, from this episode?
I think what June mentioned earlier, right, about how we're all international students, and that,
Yes.
I guess you could say it's a little bit cheesy, but keep an open mind, keep learning from one another. Maybe skip that Google search once in a while and just ask someone.
I'd like to say thank you for helping me look back and see what has happened in the ISA with the students, because I hadn't realized these different generations had different needs and experiences and sophistication, and that the world itself has grown in one sense. We are evolving to get to know one another, despite the fact that the news is all about how we're being adversarial to one another. I think we are actually becoming more soft to one another, more understanding, and more willing to respect and seek for those experiences that help us to grow more appreciative of one another.
Yeah, this is also the purpose of the podcast. That we're trying to help people to get to know others instead of trying to separate by groups. It's not they are Americans, we are the outsider. We are all from Earth. And this is not something that we have to be divided by groups. And it shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be this way. Any person deserves to be understood based on different cultures, based on different stories, and reciprocity. Learning from one another. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of what we're building now, I think, started from what June helped to nurture and create.
Yeah. I think you are probably the godmother of this show.
Oh, thank you. That's a compliment. I really appreciate that.
Truly, yeah, because otherwise we wouldn't have this idea of interviewing you. And then, although there was just a casual conversation, but we wanted to make that happen because we've been talking about cross-cultural experience or communication. We always talk about what June would do or what June's advice would be. Then we started from there.
June would go.
June would go. Yes, June would go.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Take care. All my best wishes to you.
All right. Thanks, June. Have a good one.
Thank you, June. Have a good one.
Soon.
Take care.
All right. That's it for today. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing valuable cross-cultural experience with us.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening to this episode. We will see you next time.
Shoot!